It's been a very challenging year. From the loss of life, the untold suffering of families, to the global economic shock that's destroying jobs and also livelihoods. This pandemic has absolutely changed a lot of things. But of course, not all hope is lost, because there is an opportunity for us to heal our relationship with nature. Because it's been proven, this crisis, this health crisis, reconfirms how people and nature are interlinked. We are all interconnected. So today, we are going to let our young speakers to speak more about how we can improve our relationship with nature through this storytelling platform that we've created called Sembang at WWF. And we also have an expert speaker in the house, Ms. Lavanya from WWF-Malaysia, to speak more about the new deal for nature and people. Now, I'm going to get the ball rolling. I'm going to welcome our first speaker, Syarifah Syaza Hanaa from Idrissi International School. Take it away, Syaza. You can share your screen.
Hi, I'm Syarifah Syaza Hanaa from Idrissi International School. Now let's get straight into it. So, may I ask, how many of you have bought a new dress or shirt this past month? Or maybe a new gadget, you know, iPhone 11 Pro or Samsung S20? Okay, so did you really need it, or was it just something you wanted? And you know what's worse? Did you know that all these extra things that we are buying is harmful for the environment? Today, we will be talking about consumption and consumerism. One of the main reasons business is created is to make money. If there's someone willing to buy and someone willing to sell, business people are ready to make us buy stuff whether it is beneficial to us or not. Take iPhone, for example. How many versions has been released in the past decade? Well, in 2010, iPhone 4 was released, which means that every single year, at least one version is advertised. And the differences between them is just a wider screen, a slightly better camera quality. Oh, and this year they decided to add an extra lens. It costs up to 500 ringgit more. And yet we still see people queuing up just to have a feel of the new phone. And did you know there's going to be an iPhone 12 soon? Wondered, what's that going to look like? Which leads us to the fact that we can't control ourselves because consumers don't think twice before buying. So this is somehow related to capitalism, but it's from the buyer's perspective. Have any of you seen these signs before? 80% off, buy one get one free, or those macho voices in the radio offering 20 pieces of nuggets for 15 ringgit, and you get really tempted to check it out? The main target of business is you, and you don't even know that you're being fooled. Do you even know why they put those signs in the first place? Because they know we are gullible. We have a very complicated mind, and somehow those business masterminds just know how to crack the code. They advertise stuff on what we don't really need and make it sound so appealing in our minds. And why is it that every time I search up for those nice Nike shoes, it appears somewhere else when I was just chilling? And because technology these days are so advanced that they can predict what you like in a snap. Speaking of shoes, when your best friend just bought a brand new pair of shoes, do you have a feeling that you want it too? Well, have you heard of the idiom keeping up with the Joneses? Well, it basically means a certain target that you want to achieve in order to be ranked in the best position in life. You want others to see your wealth, what you have, but you don't want others to see what you don't have. So when we see lights outside the houses, we know it's a celebration. And many of us prep with traditional costumes, right? So for me, I was born in a Malay family. So many of us would prep with baju raya in every possible color. For example, last 2 years, me and my family wore blue. And last year, we wore black and yellow. And who knows, maybe next year we will tangerine. Anyways, get back to the topic. So have any of you had the thought, look, Auntie just bought a new TV. I think I want a new TV. I think my TV is, the colors, it's fading and it's small and auntie's one is way bigger. I want it. This idea always tricks the human mind. The feeling of jealousy is always there, and somehow we tend to not sort out everything. Unless you're a super duper rich person, of course, where you can afford basically everything. Well, tough luck, we're not that rich. So budget out. Instead of buying new handbags, new cars, new decorations, reuse the old decoration. And what is so wrong with reusing your old baju raya if it still fits? Because at the end, we barely wear it because we only wore it like twice or three times that year. Oh, now this topic, I'm sure many of us would love to hear. Have any of you seen an ugly vegetable before? Well, if you have, it's not very common, right? Because just like us humans, vegetables are judged too. You know, a sweet strawberry was judged because it was too small and was the wrong shape. Half of the crops grown by farmers are thrown away, and due to this action, farmers does not have enough money for their needs. And all those nice potatoes and carrots that you plate up your dish with are not naturally grown that way. And little by little, this is affecting the environment. So we are in a global economy and we desire food from all over the world. So for us to enjoy the sweet Indian mangoes, it has to be transported from India all the way here. And for the Chinese to enjoy the Musang King durian, it has to be transported from here all the way there. So how does this affect the environment? Well, the way it's transported, because vehicles uses diesel and petrol and airplanes uses kerosene, which are all fossil fuels. And you know what happens when we burn fossil fuels. It releases toxic, and that's why we have air pollution. So how does our buying hurt the environment? I mean, we're just buying, we're shopping, you know, it's fun. Well, first of all, the resource used to make your item. Take my clothes, for example. It uses cotton. And this plastic cup, it needs to use oil. And paper, it uses wood. That's a lot of natural resources. And do you know where it goes when you throw it away? Well, it goes in the dump, piling up every day, every hour, higher and higher. Never gonna shrink. And not to mention the amount of energy used to transport it from the factory to the supermarket to your doorstep. So why do we shop? Human nature is such that we love buying new items, new stuff for the feeling of originality, and we quickly get tired of the same stuff. Because we're still clueless, we're just trying to enjoy life, you know? So how can we do? What can we do? So business is always trying to make us buy stuff, right? So by budgeting and knowing the difference between need and want is a great start. And also by selling pre-loved item is also another great start because it's a new thing to the other person. Like I've mentioned before, we quickly get tired and also we get money. So now that we know why humans can't avoid spending so much money and the impact it has on the environment, now would you really buy the iPhone 11 Pro? You can still use your old one if it's still in good condition. And would you still buy that new tangerine blouse knowing that you have 10 other perfect ones in your closet that you barely use? If all of us here can commit to making these small changes, I bet you we can make a difference. One last thing I forgot to mention. While we are being asked to stay at home, tell whoever that is doing the shopping to not overshop because the government has ensured us that there is enough resource for everyone and panic buy will only result in wastage. Thank you, that's all from me.
Thank you, Syaza. Thank you so much. Thank you. I noted that you mentioned about food consumption and the fact that we need to be more aware of our the choices that we make. And we recently did a survey with UNICEF on climate change, and we found that about 92% of the respondents actually claimed that they were concerned about food availability when it comes to the effect of climate change. So I guess when we are concerned, we need to do something about it, right? So again, we need to take a step back and review our consumption habits. Do we really need to buy food that we're not gonna eat and gonna end up in trash bins? Do we really need to buy new clothes? What are we gonna do with the old ones that we haven't worn for ages? So yeah, those are the things that we could, start thinking about. Okay, let's move on to our next speaker, Wafa Nabila Salim from IPG Bahasa Antarabangsa. But sadly, she can't be with us due to a family emergency. So we're going to play her video where she's going to be speaking about why status quo is not enough.
Assalamualaikum and good evening to the panel judges and my peers. My name is Wafa Nabila binti Salim, and I will be talking about why the current status quo is not enough, racing against time to solve climate crisis with innovation. The climate crisis has been a hot topic in the recent years. Just last year, a young girl by the name of Greta Thunberg launched a campaign, gained traction, and directed the necessary attention towards the cause. However, this is not something that has just occurred in this decade. In the year 1992, the UN produced the first framework to address the climate change problem. Despite that, not much has changed. There has been some small breakthroughs, but it is not enough. Why is that so? Let me tell you why. It's because the current status quo is not enough. We are being told to reduce our carbon footprints by being more environmentally aware and making responsible decisions to reduce our waste. And while yes, that is a good sentiment, and we really should be more aware of our waste, I would like to remind you that normal citizens like you and me are not the root of this problem. But do not get me wrong, we are not completely blameless. We still need to play our parts and be responsible in our actions. But I would like to also note that in 2017, the Climate Accountability Institute produced the Carbon Majors report, in which it was revealed that 71% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions come from just 100 companies. I repeat, 100 companies. We should also not forget the carbon dioxide emissions coming from developed countries and major emerging economy nations. The International Energy Agency compiled data estimating the carbon dioxide emissions coming from coal, oil, natural gas, and other fuels such as industrial waste and non-renewable municipal waste. In the year 2016, China contributed 9,056.8 megaton of carbon dioxide emissions in total, which is 29% of all emissions that year. And following behind them is the United States, contributing 4,833.1 megaton, which is 16% of all emissions. The consequence of all this is the rapid deterioration of the planet. We were told by the UN scientists that if we want to save the Earth, we only have 12 years to do it. The efforts have to be done within 12 years. And now the numbers have gone down to 18 months. That's less than 2 years. After that, it will be harder to undo all the damages done. It will be harder to turn back from the damage that we've done. So how do we stop this? What do we do to stop this from happening? The UN reports that we have to focus on key sectors where action can make the most difference, such as energy, cities, nature-based solutions, and heavy industry, amongst the many sectors that can be focused on. There are many innovations that can combat climate crisis. Public transportation is one of them. All the governments around the world should prioritize in improving their public transportation systems in order to encourage their people to leave their cars at home and use buses and trains. A smooth and dependable system will encourage the people and give them confidence to use public transportation and leave their cars at home, lessening the carbon emissions from vehicles. This is obviously something that all the countries around the world should consider. And in Malaysia, while the public transportation in Kuala Lumpur is less than perfect, it has made life easier for me while I was studying in Kuala Lumpur. The public transportation there has made it easier for me to travel around the city without the use of a car. It doesn't cost much. It lessens the cost and it lessens the carbon emissions, which is a win-win for me. But I do not enjoy the same privilege in Kota Kinabalu, where I live. The places here are also too far for me to simply walk to, and it's a tourist hub, much like Kuala Lumpur, and yet the city still lacks in decent public transportation. This is something the government should think about, because public transportation is not a waste of investment. It will make life better for the people of the country. Talking about public transportation, it's also high time for cars to stop using fuel. It's time to transition into electronic cars. For example, Tesla. These cars are good for the environment because they use sustainable energy to keep running. The WWF UK has been ensuring that the government funds the charging infrastructure for electronic vehicles in order to provide an alternative to the people in exchange for their diesel and petrol cars. The WWF UK are also doing their best to encourage a quicker transition to electronic cars. But there is one flaw. The whole idea is great, but electronic cars are simply too expensive for people working normal day jobs. The owners of these cars are usually those from the wealthier category. As a middle-class person, I do not see myself ever owning one of these cars simply because of the price tag, and I do not see my family owning these too, because it's out of our budget. And that's the biggest problem. It defeats the purpose of creating electronic cars. Electronic cars are supposed to substitute the traditional cars that are harmful to the environment. But because people cannot afford them, I feel like it does defeat the point of the innovation. Affordability is the biggest obstacle in ensuring people live clean and sustainable lives. This is something that the government should look into and provide the people with a cheaper alternative. Because with a cheaper alternative, it will be more accessible to the people of the country, and it will make a bigger change. Moving on, there is a new innovation by Innovate, a carbon dioxide fuel bioplastics that pumps in carbon dioxide to feed microorganisms, which then produces a material that can be collected and turned into bioplastics. That's killing two birds with one stone. And it also will help with the whole situation of plastic waste in the ocean. The numbers right now are simply staggering. According to the ocean cleanup, there are currently 5 trillion pieces of plastic waste in the world's oceans. I can barely imagine or visualize what 1 billion looks like, much less 5 trillion pieces of plastic waste. We have to do better. And personally, I think that we should stop using plastics altogether. But if we do need to use plastic, I feel that we should come up with a local alternative inspired by Unite. The heavy industry is a big problem. Fortunately, many of them are pledging to make a change. Many oil and gas companies are looking for other sources for options, products. Equinor, a Norwegian petroleum refining company, expects to direct a fifth of their annual investments out to 2030 in new energy solutions, such as offshore wind and carbon capture technology. This is something that our local oil and gas companies can follow. because it is better to capitalize on something that is not damaging to the earth. It is also the responsibility of the government to ensure that companies limit their emissions and push for clean energy. Non-government organizations also play a huge part in campaigning and bringing attention to these pressing matters. The WWF UK has successfully campaigned for the government to commit to stop using coal in the UK energy system, to which they have successfully made the government commit to do so by 2025. This is an incredible achievement because it shows that our voices can be heard and our voices will bring a change. This is good for the activism happening all around the world. And most of these policies depend on the government to implement, to change. But it does not mean that we cannot take matters into our own hands. As a future teacher myself, I will have the opportunity to impart knowledge of the environmental issues to my students. I will educate them on the dangers of climate change, and it will be more impactful to the younger generation and something that they will remember as they grow up, as they grow older, and they will be more responsible in their actions. I will also encourage them to think of alternatives and solutions for the issues that we have now. And as you know, children have very ambitious ideas, but that doesn't mean that they are impossible. The knowledge that they have from they were younger can be used when they are older. These ideas doesn't mean it stops in school. Maybe in 30 or 40 years, some of my students can actually come up with a solution to our problems. As a teacher, I have the power to inspire that happening. And I hope to nurture the next generation of leaders. I sincerely hope to nurture the next generation of leaders to care for the environment, not only for themselves and for others, but also for the environment. In conclusion, the status quo is not enough as it does not target the main source of the problem. We have many innovations that can combat climate crisis, but we should also play our parts. I would like to remind everyone that there is no plan B. We only have one planet. This is our only planet, and we should care for it. The time to act is now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Wafa. We really hope that she was gonna, be with us today, but too bad that she's can't. I hope she's doing okay back at her place. Now, before we move on, we have a poll, just about 1 minute for you guys to answer. Here it is. Okay, I'm gonna end the poll. Okay, looks like, which of these options you would like to see implemented more in order to educate people on environmental issues? And looks like a lot of you guys want to have education on social innovation. Nice, nice. Online workshops on reducing carbon footprints. All right, we will take into consideration. And what's the next one? In light of the current situation with COVID-19, which of these environmental issues do you feel to be the most important to look at into? Most of you answered access and availability of resources, clean water, air, and food, and sustainable consumption and production. Thank you very much. Now, next up, we have, I would like to welcome our credible speaker for this session, Ms. Lavanya from WWF-Malaysia. Lavanya, are you already online?
Yes, I'm here. I am.
Okay, I'm gonna, share my screen. All right. Now, Lavanya serves as the head of policy and climate change in WWF-Malaysia. Now, as she speaks about the issue, you can click on the chat box and submit your questions. And after she's done, we're gonna ask the questions and I'm gonna pick some of the questions that you guys asked. So please keep the questions coming in, all right? So I'm just going to show you the QR code that you can use. Right, yeah. So this is the QR code, or you can just simply deposit, look at the chat box and deposit your questions there. Okay, Lavanya, could you tell us a few words about yourself and the work that you do in policy and climate change? Sounds very exciting.
Thank you, Parisha. And first of all, thanks so much for asking me to be part of this, because this is really excellent and exciting. Happy World Environment Day. Happy Hari Gawai. Happy Pesta Kaamatan. Happy Hari Raya. Okay, to everybody. And so, what I do within our Panda family is do the stuff on policy work, which is basically to advocate to the government, right? So I'm heading the policy division and the climate change team, and we, do all this interactions with the government on things like biodiversity, climate change, the sustainable development goals, I'm sure which you would have all heard about as well. We're also working on things like plastics for the policy side, even shifting, what progress means. So we normally, I think you heard very well from the two speakers earlier about, our consumption and, how much what we all aspire to, and sometimes how gullible we are. So actually, what is progress, and should it be measured by GDP? I mean, those are the questions we are asking as well. Continuing recovery. Now, why we, doing all this? It's very cross-cutting, obviously. But why? Because we are obviously WWF, and our main focus is wildlife, right? But wildlife, as we learn and try to protect them, we know that we also need to protect their habitats. So we need to make sure it is their habitats as well that continue to be protected. And when we do that, then we come to the point where we look at drivers. What are those drivers that are threatening these spaces, these habitats? So we need to look at those things as well. For example, how we produce things, that the cities and the urban areas, how we consume, the impacts of climate change, and even how our financial systems are set up, how our education, what we are, So these are all things that we need to look at in order to ultimately achieve the goal of protecting wildlife. So as part of policy, we try and touch base with all our colleagues. It's cross-cutting. We are a science-based organization. So all our proposals are underpinned by the excellent work that our programs who work on terrestrial and marine ecosystems and species produce. And of course, we work together when excellent opportunities like this, like Sembang, arise, to be able to interact with very important stakeholders like yourselves, because you are the voices and conscience of the future. So I hope in that long-winded way I've explained what we do, what I do.
Thank you. Great stuff. Very, very important and relevant. And well, with support with UNICEF, we recently did a survey, Lavanya, on Malaysians' understanding of climate change. And about 91.2% of the respondents have not heard about the New Deal for Nature and People. Now, perhaps you could just start by sharing on what is it and why does it matter to us?
Sure, thank you. Thank you for that question. New Deal for Nature and People. Now, how many of you watched the Netflix series Our Planet? It was screened last year. And I think it's still available on Netflix. So I strongly encourage all of you to go and watch it. This was our start on this journey, okay? The New Deal for Nature and People is actually a call for global action, for a meaningful, what we call super year 2020. And why do we say 2020 is super year? It was meant to be super year. Of course, COVID-19 has made it super in other ways, right? not in the way we anticipated. But originally, 2020 would have seen the culmination of some very important international conventions coming up with important future agendas for nature, for climate, and for the Sustainable Development Goals, amongst other things. You saw Wafa's presentation of 1992 being a key year where a lot of conventions came about after the Earth Summit. So these, in 2020, there were supposed to be a lot of momentum towards implementing these conventions. Unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know how we want to look at it. We can look at it as fortunately, perhaps, because as you've heard, nature has been given a rest. We have also had a chance to sit back and reflect on what we need to do. And it might be an opportunity for us to actually instigate the kind of change that is needed. So I would like to take it as positive when we look at what's maybe happening with COVID-19 from this angle, right? We need to move on. So NDNP, New Deal for Nature and People, is actually WWF's call for global action. It is not simply an organizational mission. It is actually a planetary one. Yeah, for all of us to come together to do what is necessary so that we have a thriving planet which we can all live on. So if you see the slide on the sectorally, rather than just my explanation. So you see the primary goal is to benefit people, all of us. It's for our own benefit, right? But we are underpinning this according to how nature is looked at, right? So you see there's zero loss of natural habitats, zero extinction, and half footprint, yeah? So you might be wondering, why is the well-being of people built around nature and maybe not built around what we normally hear about GDP growth or economy, okay? Let me now take you to the next slide, if you don't mind, to explain that. Can we have the next slide, please?
This one?
Yes, thank you. So here you see the Sustainable Development Goals. I am sure all of you are familiar with the 17 goals, which we are meant to achieve by 2030, these goals, so that we have a society, a community which is resilient, strong, and essentially the tagline is leaving no one behind. So everybody has got certain basic rights, and those basic rights are met and the basic needs are met. So if you look at this, it is organized in a sort of wedding cake model. This model is called the Rockstrom wedding cake model. And you see that the biosphere, or those goals related to nature, are at the bottom. They're fundamental. They are the things that underpin everything. And on top of that, you see the goals relating to society, all the elements that you need for society to be strong, to be thriving. And above that, you see the elements that are needed further to build an economy. And all this has to be done together in partnership. So what this really depicts is that nature underpins everything, and when nature is on top of that, you have a society that's built, and that society in turn drives or builds the economy. So they are all interrelated for sure, but we really need to make sure that we are looking after the fundamental, which is the biosphere. And that is where we feel that we are facing many, many problems. So if I can take you to the next slide, please. Can I have the next slide, please? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So what's happened now is we are actually living with imbalance. We are focusing too much on sort of economy, the economic growth, and not really paying attention to what's happening to the fundamental basis. And this is causing many problems. For example, you see on the slide, massive destruction of natural spaces, plus the catastrophic loss of species and biodiversity of life. Do you know that as of 2016, I believe, or 2014, we have lost more than 60% of the biodiversity on planet Earth compared to 1970. That is, incredible. That is really alarming. And then the third is, the other problem is unsustainable production and consumption of nature's resources. So we are over-consuming, we are wasteful, and these are all problems which we need to address, and that's what the New Deal for Nature and People is about. So we've come up as a global network for 3 goals. You see that: protect and restore natural habitats, safeguard biodiversity of life, and halve the footprint of production and consumption. And how do we do this? These are the solutions. We propose that we at least protect 30% and sustainably manage the rest of all of Earth, right? So keep the terrestrial areas as well as the marine areas, we protect at least 30%. And then we make sure we stop all those human-induced extinctions of species, and we recover species population and stop unsustainable wildlife exploitation. And finally, in terms of sustainable practices, we really need to transform many of these systems, the food, the agriculture, fishing, forestry, etc. Right? So these are the 3 solutions, broad solutions, but you can see they're cross-cutting, as I mentioned, how all this work has to happen across everything we do. So these solutions are cross-cutting. And what are the benefits? We want to see that there is enough water and food for the 9 billion population that we're anticipating. At the same time, we protect biodiversity, so the diversity of life continues. And we have a stable climate. And all this will then mean that human health and well-being are maintained. So in a way, if you want to look at it, it's living to be nature positive by 2030. All right? We are now, in a sharp decline when it comes to biodiversity. So we need to reverse that. We need to bend the curve and make it positive. Yeah. I hope that.
Thank you, Lavanya. So in the same survey that we did with UNICEF, respondents agreed that climate change needs responsible actions from NGOs, individuals, government agencies, and businesses.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how can we, individuals, businesses, and all the things that I mentioned just now, be part of this, the New Deal for Nature and People?
Sure. Well, there are many things we can all do, right? But let me maybe focus on 3 broad things. One is, I think all of us, in looking at what motivates us, we should seek purpose rather than profit. Yeah. So by doing that, I believe profit will automatically follow. That purpose should be to build social well-being by respecting nature and working in harmony with nature. So we should really be purpose-driven, purpose-driven to restore our relationship with Mother Earth, with nature, and make sure that all of us as society have the right and access to fundamental things like clean air, clean water, food, right? So by shifting our thinking, by shifting our motivations towards that will automatically, start moving things. We will make decisions differently compared to when we look at profits only as the defining factor. Yeah. And I think earlier Syaza mentioned about consumerism and how, our weaknesses and our gullible nature is actually being exploited.
Yeah.
Time for advertising as well, unfortunately. But this is where, if we change our value systems, we won't be so susceptible to such exploitation. Yeah. So in a way, it's to create purpose, to look at, what we are doing from the context of purpose. The second I would say is, and I think Wafa also touched on this, we need to advocate and innovate for change, right? And Wafa showed some very good, examples of how innovation and the kind of innovation that's already happening. And we, all of us, can advocate for this to the politicians, to the business community, even to our own families. Yeah, and we can show to decision makers that the rakyat, and particularly the youth, value our natural species. We can ask that we continue to keep 50% of this beautiful land, Malaysia, under forest cover. This is a pledge that was made back in 1992, and we still have at least 50%. But we should say, yes, we want to see this. This is what we want, as the people of Malaysia. This is the heritage, our wealth that we need to see protected, and we are all behind this. So we need to advocate that. We need to advocate that our beautiful marine areas are continue to be protected. The rich coral and the rich marine life continue to thrive. We are so blessed. But we as the people need to make it known that we appreciate this, that we want this. Yeah. So, and we also need to advocate and say and innovate for climate action. And that action, as I think Wafa mentioned, should also incorporate nature-based solutions, so that you bring these two, nature and climate, these two big existential problems, you bring them together. Yeah. And when I talk about nature-based solutions, I'm talking about things like making sure our forests continue to provide vital ecosystem services like water regulation, microclimate regulation, support our food systems. Mangroves continue to protect. They are the defense mechanism, the natural defense mechanisms against things like storm surges. Those of you who might be, some of you might have been too young to remember this, but back in 2004, we had the major tsunami, and coastal areas which mangroves were actually protected, whilst those which had been stripped of those mangroves suffered very severe losses, including human losses. Yeah? And you have coral reefs that provide nurseries for fisheries, right? So these are the kind of things that we have to look at in terms of solutions, which serve to protect nature as well as serve to create resilience to climate change. And so I would like to go back to saying that, okay, let's imagine if instead of having all our thoughts centered around profit making, we instead pivot around building strong and resilient societies. That's called social capital. And vibrant nature, that's called natural capital. Yeah. So the third point I would like to make very quickly is we need to be the change agents. We need to be the change that we want to see as Gandhi. Yeah. So example by action, how you consume, what you consume, and you can build that or be part of a movement that is asking for this change, asking for this shift. Be part of this movement that says we need a new deal for nature and people. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Lavanya, for sharing your insights. We actually have a few questions from the audience, and I'm just gonna go in, yeah. Let's see. So I do here. Okay, these are the questions. Now, Captain Planet, how can the New Deal for nature benefit big corporations? How can we convince them to adjust their costs to a more sustainable way? Good questions, Captain Planet.
Yes, thank you, Captain Planet. Well, are big corporations any different from you and me? Don't big corporations also need those basic ecosystem services that nature abundantly provides us? For example, clean water, food, clean air. These are all factors of production that corporates actually rely on heavily. I'll give you an example. There was one company that did an accounting, accounted for how much value nature provided to their business viability. And they found it was about 76%. And that made them really sit up. because oftentimes corporates don't account for the things nature provides because it's taken for granted. It's considered an externality. So once corporations understand that they are actually utilizing a lot of these services without accounting for it, without seeing it, I think they will, by themselves, once they realize that, take that into account. Why wouldn't they? It's part of their whole business plan, if you'd like. It's part of their whole ability to stay viable, to stay afloat. The thing is, at the moment, the systems don't make us think of how much we rely on the forests to provide the clean water that the farmers use to produce the rice, or that the manufacturing industry uses in terms of being able to produce all the goods they produce, right? So you don't see it that far down the line. You only see it as, oh, water coming from my taps. Yeah. And then you complain when, you know, water doesn't come from your taps, and I'm paying this amount for my water, but not realizing where that water actually comes from, right? So I think we need to engage and educate so that everybody realizes that we are fundamentally reliant on the services that nature provides. From that fundamental awareness, I think actions will happen. And we already see a lot of encouraging actions by big corporations, you know, where they take into account sustainable practices as part and parcel plan. Yeah? It's not about doing something outside, it's actually incorporated into their very reason for existence.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions because there are so many good questions around here. Okay, is the current environmental policy in Malaysia adequate, updated, the fast-changing world? If no, how can citizens like me provide my input for the policy? Is there a way for us to do it?
Sure.
Tricky question.
You know, Malaysia is quite amazing. Very good question. Malaysia is quite amazing. We have been actually having a lot of, we have a lot of policies, okay? We have a lot of environmental policies, environmental related policies, beautiful things that are, you know, that have been written up. We have been, in fact, forerunners in this. We have been engaged in environmental matters even from 1974. Some of you like, and I would strongly recommend this, go and read the 3rd Malaysia Plan. It's got some beautiful, amazing thoughts about how to work with nature in our development process back in 1974. What's the problem here? I mean, we've had all these amazing plans. Even the 11th Malaysia Plan, if you look at it, has got some very good things relating to green growth. Yeah. But why does this then not translate into a different society or a different reality for us today? Why do we still see the need for more to be done? It's because of implementation. You know, we have a lot of lovely plans, but when it comes to implementation, we see that not much is done. So in terms of environmental policies, citizens can engage. You can engage with, firstly, with your members of parliament. You can talk to them and tell them, look, these are the things we want to see. So when you go to parliament to vote in any new pieces of legislation, or when you have parliamentary debates, please raise these things, right? Tell them you're interested. They are serving you. So you need to tell them that you are interested. You need to see action on all these things. And on top of that, the government does open up for public comments for some of these things. For example, the environmental policies, legislation. There are portals which you can visit where, when the time is right, they open up for public feedback. Please engage in those processes. Even in the crafting of the 12th Malaysia Plan, hopefully there will be an opportunity for public to comment. And in that, please do raise your comments. And the other way, of course, is to, you know, engage with people like us, you know, which, you know, it's our business to also advocate and raise these kind of issues. And we really would appreciate hearing from you, your ideas, your innovative thoughts, because this is something that we have to do together. And we on our part, you know, will take it up in our advocacy opportunities with the government. So these are some of the ways I think that you could ensure that your inputs are taken into account in policy making.
All right, that's in terms of policy and what we can do, right? Okay, last question. The 6th mass extinction recently made the news. What are the small, significant actions people like you and I can do every day to prevent further extinctions of wildlife or nature?
Very good. Okay. One of the major things that's causing this extinction is habitat loss. Remember, I told you about habitats and how those are needed for our wildlife to thrive. And why is that? One major thing is what we use land for, and land is often converted for food production. Now, at the moment, we utilize a lot of land to produce food, which is in turn used to feed animals and then to feed Earth. Okay, so we are taking the sun's energy, which, you know, the plants photosynthesize, and then we are converting it. So there's a, you know, diminishing rate of return when we do that. And we need more land in order to feed more people if we continue to look at it from that perspective. So what we should try and do is to manage our land so that we don't have to utilize so much land for our needs. Sorry? Can you hear me?
Yeah, okay.
No?
No, that was just.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, better now.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear us?
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I can hear you now. Yep. Yeah, so what I was saying was, it's how we manage our land. And one of the key things in land management is managing our own needs. In terms of the food we consume, so we could move towards more of a plant-based diet. For example, using is utilized to its optimum, right? Making sure that we diversify the plants so that, you know, going back to traditional practices, our nenek moyang would, you know, plant different things, right? Because they understood that the diversity was important. You plant legumes to provide nitrates into the soil, and that nitrates will be used for other plants. So that kind of diversity, we need to go back to that kind of thinking rather than monocropping, which, yeah, you produce a lot, but it depletes the soil of a lot of its nutrients, yeah? And we need to also make sure we stop wastage. You know, Gandhi again said, there's enough for man's needs, but not enough for man's greed.
True.
So we need to make sure that we consume wisely and, you know, make sure that the distribution system is there. COVID-19 showed us, remember, you know, the vegetables from Cameron's not reaching the people who needed it here, right? So that's essentially, you know, globally also that's a problem. There's a lot of wastage. There's a lot of things that are produced that just go to waste because they are not properly distributed. So if we can address all these things, then we don't need to continue to encroach into the habitats, to continue to, you know, keep transforming land for our own users. And that will give space for biodiversity to thrive. Yeah, so that's why if you see our New Deal for Nature and People, one of the key things is to keep 50% of Mother Earth as far as possible in its natural state. Yeah.
Thank you, Lavanya. Thank you so much. For concerned citizen of Earth, just an additional note, because you asked what are the things that we can do. You can also follow our Instagram, also Facebook, WWF-MyESD, where currently we are running the 21-day Breaking Habits with ESD challenge, where we ask you to do small but significant actions on a daily basis. We're coming to an end, but you can always follow and do whatever that we have posted for the past weeks. Okay, thank you, Lavanya, for sharing your insights and your valuable time answering the questions. Good questions. We'll send you some of the questions so that, you know, we can take it offline. And I guess one of the many things that public can also do collectively is to engage with our government representatives to ensure that they commit to this New Deal for nature and people, and also they take action to protect our natural ecosystems and strengthen their nature and climate commitments. With that being said, before we wrap up our second session of Sembang, let's do a quiz. We just want to get an overview how much have you have gained and understood on today's content. So because this will help us do better in our future engagement with you guys. I'm going to share with you the Quizzy code. I hope you guys can see it. We're going to give about, how long? We will start the quiz in 1 minute. So make sure that you key in the code 172014. Go to joinmyquiz.com. And we're probably going to give about 3 to 4 minutes for you guys to answer. I can see 43 participants. So I want to see 42 of you guys take part in this quiz. Except me, huh? So I'm sharing the screen. So thank you very much. Well, you know what? Don't stop learning about the issue here today. You got to read more, create conversation with your friends, families, and whatnot about the issue. And once you have the knowledge, remember to go beyond the awareness. And I would like to welcome Sophia Lim, our CEO of WWF-Malaysia, to say a few words just to wrap it up. Sophia, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right.
And I'm very glad to be here. Let me just share that. Well, firstly, happy World Environmental Day to everybody, and of course to be part of this Sembang event, which we're all very proud of. And it's very good for me to know that not just do we have students online, but also teachers, representatives from other universities and the public, and of course my fellow colleagues from WWF-Malaysia. As you've heard from Lavanya, our head of policy and climate change, the New Deal for nature and people is so close to our heart. And it's because that nature offers us our life support system. And most of the time, as we all know, we tend to take it for granted. But as you have heard, healthy natural systems offer us fresh water, clean air, and a stable climate. And of course, also offers us the food, medicines, and so on and so forth, which will help us underpin all our economies. Today, we know that the nature is under a lot of stress due to human activities. And therefore, you know, I invite you to join us in support of our movement and ask to create a world which is, of course, nature positive and carbon neutral. Action is critically required. It is so important that we move forward with this to secure long-term for human health and our prosperity. We definitely need to rebalance our relationship with nature to secure a sustainable future for us all, people and our planet. And I'd like to refer to one of the speakers who said that there is no plan B, which I greatly support and subscribe to. We all know that there is only one planet, only one home. And therefore, the time to act is now. And it is so good to see the participation from all of you in our Sembang event, because as Lavanya rallied the cry for all of us to be change agents, I definitely support that and encourage that all of us play our little part. Small change, if we all collectively do it together, can have a big impact for all of us. And this is actually in support also of our motto. In WWF, we always have this saying of together possible. And together possible, if all of us play our role together, we can make the changes for the better. And with this, I'd like to thank you once again for your support, your interest. And it was very interesting for me to be part of this because I saw quite a bit of very interesting questions, which to me reflected or reflects the interest of the public in rallying support to WWF, and of course to supporters in our cry to the governments, to organizations, and all stakeholders who plays a role in making this planet a better home for today and for tomorrow. So with this, thank you very much and have a good afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Syarifah, for spending your weekend with us. Thank you so much. This really means a lot to us.
It means a lot to me too, yeah, to be part of this and to be, as I said, I'm inspired. I'm inspired with the support that all of you are giving to us. I mean, sometimes it can be like, you know, when we sense that there is a public support, individuals, students, youth, teachers, and so on and so forth, it just gives us the impetus. It just gives us the inspiration that we are on the right track. We are on this journey together. And I mean, I cannot express how delighted I am. Yeah, so thank you once again.
Welcome. It makes us want to do more, even in this situation, we want to do more.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, all right, if you guys would like to know more about the work that we do, WWF-Malaysia, and also the education program, you can visit our website at wwf-my-esd.com. You can also check out our Instagram, WWF-MyESD. Follow us. We have got some great stuff going on. We've got campaigns, we've got tips and whatnot. So join us. You are also welcome to join our final session at 4 p.m. today. With that, I want to thank you guys. You guys are so awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.